The Oakland Athletics are moving to Las Vegas very soon, but today I am jumpstarting that process by relocating them in MLB The Show. I have 5 years to win the Las Vegas Aces a World Series, and if I fail, I have to give away another copy of MLB The Show to a random commoner. 5 years might seem like a lot of time, but there's a big twist, because like in my other videos, our payroll can never exceed $60 million, and we cannot exploit the trade system. But on top of that, I am not allowed to scout any players in the draft. I created this custom team using logos that I found in the vault, and we're actually starting out with a pretty solid core consisting of talented pieces like Mason Miller, Brent Rooker, and other young players. However, on the other hand, this starting rotation needs serious help, and because I'm not allowed to scout any players in the draft, we're relying on this farm system more than ever. Just to knock on wood, I have not had to give away MLB The Show in any of my recent challenges, but at the same time, I have never restricted myself by taking away my scouting privileges, so this will truly be a unique video. We start out the day with a huge Kyle McCann double, and now Max Schumann keeps this one fair the other way for our first RBI of the year, as two of our more under-the-radar guys start the season out on a good note. It is only the second inning, but so far our offense is really cooking as Andujar scores another run, and keep in mind, this great performance is coming pretty early in the game against a solid pitcher in Tanner Bybee. However, the player on the mound for us is probably the most expensive guy in organization history, and that is former two-time All-Star Luis Severino, whose contract is gonna be a complete nightmare. Now obviously, he's a solid player, but as it stands, he is taking up 1/3 of our budget, and I really cannot justify that. At some point, I'm gonna trade him, so it's very important that he plays well so I can maximize his value, and he still has not given up a run after getting bailed out of the inning with a double play. We're in good position to score another run, but this chopper will not clear the infield, so it finally feels like Cleveland's starting to gain momentum as this double goes into the gap, and Lane Thomas puts the first run on the board. Starting the year off with an opening day win against an American League power would be a huge confidence boost for the many young players on our team, but ever since that second inning rally, our offense has gone cold, and we just blew another chance to score. Our overall lack of talent is starting to show through the cracks as the Guardians are waking up, but Severino is still cooking in the 7th. All we have to do is get through the 8th inning, and then it's Miller time, but this also exposes our biggest weakness because aside from him, the rest of this bullpen is not good at all. Jose Ramirez just tripled down the first baseline, but what a play at first to stop him from scoring. So all we need now is one more out, and while this is hit sharply to shortstop, the play is made, and we are still in front. That was definitely a bit close for comfort, and even though I trust Mason Miller, it would be nice to get him an insurance run. However, our best and now our second best hitters both cannot get it done, so we're gonna need Miller to lead us to victory. Obviously, being able to throw triple digits really helps him out, but so far it also seems he's having trouble hitting his spots as the tying run gets aboard. However, he would bounce back, striking out a batter, and the final out of the game's facing an 0-2 count. We might be able to win some games with Severino and Miller as there's a swing and a miss, but the ball goes past our catcher, and they're actually gonna reach base on strike 3. I stand by my opinion that that is the dumbest rule in all of baseball, and now Miller's gonna pay for it as he misses his spot, which allows the tying run to score, except they're going for the lead. Tyler Freeman rounding third, heading home, and fortunately the throw is on time. We have now lost all of our momentum thanks to that absolutely ridiculous play, as we get reminded that strike 3 doesn't always mean the batter's out. After a single, the go-ahead run is at third base, and it goes off Jackson's shoe, so we're trailing for the first time today, but thankfully only by a run. While Mason Miller's a great young player, Emmanuel Clase might be even better, and he's truly the final boss standing in our way of victory, but this is hit well into right field where it is not gonna drop. For a split second, I thought we hit a walk-off home run, but now Ruiz is gonna avenge us with a perfect double into the gap, and he becomes the winning run on second base. We are far from a talented offense, but the one thing we do pretty well is hit in big-time situations, as we have a lot of guys with very high clutch ratings, and the winning run is now on second base. Ryan Noda could be our last chance to redeem ourselves, and right on cue, he will score Ruiz and walk off the first game of the video. That was definitely not pretty, but at least a pass ball on strike 3 is not going to cost Mason Miller and his team the victory. And while that's a good start, I'm a little concerned our season's not going to get much better. Splitting our first series of the year is a big deal, and now against the Red Sox, we tie the game in the bottom of the 9th as we were down to our final out, but Ryan Noda comes up big, and we have a chance to go back to extra innings, but why do that when you can win the game right here? Lawrence Butler, goodbye. He really did not want to go back to the 10th inning, inning as our bats deliver us a huge win, which made the difference between winning and losing our first series. We're not allowed to scout players, but that does not limit us from discovering guys, and all I can really hope is to uncover a few gems. Our time in Vegas is off to a great start, but now we're playing our first division rival, and the Rangers are definitely a big challenge. We are back in extras for the second time this year, except this time we are the ones getting walked off against, as Marcus Semien wins them the series with a deep shot into left. That is unfortunate, but at least we found some players in the first week of discovery, as we're picking at number 4 overall in our first year, so I'm hoping we find a really quality starting pitcher. We're consistently hovering right around a 500 record, which honestly is better than I expected in this first season. But with the way that our starting rotation and especially our bullpen has started to play, things could turn for the worse sooner rather than later. Unless we pull off a late rally, we're going to lose another series, this time at the hands of St. Louis, as Andujar cannot sneak it through, so we need another 9th inning miracle. Here's one of our most promising young talents, Zach Geloff, who has not had a good start to the year, and being 24 years old, he is not going to have much more time to figure it out. There are so many players like that in this lineup, including Ryan Noda, who we've already seen some great moments from this year, as he finds a way to keep another game alive, but Brent Rooker breaks his bat, and that's how we're going to lose another series. We're officially under 500 at 8-10, and according to the stats, aside from a few guys like Brent Rooker and Lawrence Butler, we are not producing enough runs. Then on top of that, if we're going to even get to a 500 record, the play from our pitching staff definitely needs to improve. There's no doubt that my goal is to draft a high floor starting pitcher this year, and so far, Rich Ramirez might be our best option, as his walks per 9 in particular is very intriguing. Outside of the discovery guys though, my favorite player so far might be Pedro Casto, who's at least guaranteed to come in with high 70s potential and decent overall. Looking at our top prospects, we're pretty set in the infield with Jacob Wilson, Tommy White, and Nick Kurtz, but our pitching is a completely different story, as our best prospect is 25 years old and already at the MLB level. Then after that, we have a C potential 23-year-old, so in order to build a competitive team, I might have to sell high on some core players for the sake of acquiring some better starting pitching prospects, because this situation is really not good. We continue a very rough month of April, as we have not won a single series ever since the one against the Red Sox, and now the Yankees are trying to sweep us. We are hanging on by a thread thanks to a great start from Luis Severino, and after a double play, he is still in the game as he stops a potential Aaron Judge single with his foot. He has been one of this team's only positives on the mound, and that is exactly why I think I need to trade him sooner rather than later, because right now he's not only at max value, but he's only going to get more expensive, and that is a crazy error in left field. That is the worst defensive error I've ever seen, as it's very rare to see somebody just miss a fly ball. But regardless, we are going back to extra innings, where who else but Ryan Noda strikes with an RBI single. He may be 70 overall at 28 years old, but he's playing very well out the gate and has 99 plate discipline, so there's a very good chance he could be a building block for the future. Boston still has not recorded an out in this inning, and Toro is going to continue our rally, as we always seem to pick late game situations to finally do something on offense. We have finally given Mason Miller a decent cushion, as this flyout will end the game, so there's no doubt that we have some decent building blocks, but they are not good enough on their own to win us a lot of games. To start May, we have slipped even further under 500, and now we're tied up against the Pirates, but we are back in extra innings after failing to walk it off. A single advances the go-ahead run to third base, and now they score him. So once again, our squad is gonna need to clutch up, but on his very first pitch, Ruiz is gonna drive in the tying run. This team always finds a way to pull itself out of hot water, but now they want the win, as they're down to their last out of the inning, and while this is good contact going into left field, it is not far enough. We need our bullpen to hold on for just a little bit longer if we want a chance, but of course, that is easier said than done, especially with O'Neal Cruz stealing third. One grounder is all they really need for him to advance home, and it doesn't help that that was not a clean play, so the luck of the cards simply was not on the Aces side. They are sinking even further to the bottom of the division, so I think it's finally time to see what I can get for Luis Severino, but it seems the return's gonna be a little... Just for that reason, I'm going to hold off on trading him, especially because we're really going to need him for this next stretch of games. We're taking on 3 division teams in a row and are off to a bad start, as we lose a 1-run game to the Rangers, and of course, they're way better than us. After losing that series 3-1, we're facing Seattle, and we're in the 11th inning, but neither side has scored a single run. However, we have a chance to change that as Blade rips this one into right field, where it unfortunately drifts outside. He was only a few feet away from a very clutch home run in the 11th, but a sac fly is gonna put a run on the board. So Mason Miller should have a chance to close this one out, but as you can see, he is very low on stamina, so he cannot enter the game. With Miller out of the equation, I'm a little less confident with 69 overall Austin Adams, but believe it or not, he is the best option to come out of the bullpen, and this is going deep into left field all the way back, where thankfully it stays in the yard. Even though that was terrifying, we secure the win against our division rival, and it seems we finally have momentum after a big losing skid as we win the series. After a few weeks of discovering pitchers, I think we found as many as we're gonna get, so we're moving on to position players, starting with the catchers. Looking at our stats, it might be hard to believe right now, but I truly believe this team could surprise people in the back half of the year, especially if we can win our second division series in a row, and that play at first might have just saved the game. If that single got through, we probably would have lost our lead as they had 2 runners in scoring position, although they just tied it and now they pull ahead. This team may be in Las Vegas now, but they still look like the Oakland Athletics, and after winning 3 straight games, it seems they're back to losing once again. I'm definitely a bit concerned if we can't even win a series against Colorado, but we just tied it up in game 3, so we are truly fighting to prove we are not the worst team in the league. There's a very good chance we're going to extra innings where we could walk it off, but with 1 on, with 1 away in the 9th, we're gonna try to win this thing as Schumann sends this one into right field where it drops in, and get out the oxygen tank for Shea Langeliers, who's rounding third, the throw coming in, and it is in time. He was way too overconfident heading home, so we're going to extras. And of course with this bullpen, this is not where you want to be as we immediately give up a 2-run bomb into right field. I really wanted to see what we had this season, but losing to Colorado might be the icing on the cake for my patience, so unless we can somehow pull a win out of nowhere, we might be simulating to the draft, although here's a double from Ruiz. All of a sudden, we have the winning run at second base, and a sacrifice fly ties the game, and here's Ryan Noda, who's been very clutch. We have already seen him make so many big plays this season, but unfortunately that one stays on the ground, so now it's all up to our best hitter Brent Rooker, who swings at the 3-0 pitch, but it's a line out. We should have a chance to win as long as Toglia doesn't hit another dinger, but after scaring me with the foul ball, he strikes out. We are so close to completing this comeback, but for some reason we cannot score a single run, although we luck out with a bad throw to first, so we have 2 guys on with none away, and Andujar is finally gonna end this with a single past the shortstop. We only scored 7 runs on 18 total hits, which certainly is not good, but I guess at the very least, in the true spirit of Moneyball, we're getting on base a lot. This has been a great season from one of my favorite hitters in baseball, Brent Rooker, but then after him, maybe the biggest surprise of the year is Ryan Noda, who's putting up a 304 average and a team best 388 on base percentage. However, aside from those 2 guys and Lawrence Butler, there's a pretty massive drop off as we're certainly not getting the offensive production we need, but more than anything, this pitching rotation is probably the biggest thing holding our squad back. I think the guys I had the highest expectation for were Jeffrey Springs and Joey Estes, and they've ironically been our worst options, so by trading Luis Severino, we'd probably be tanking for the #1 pick in the draft, which I'm certainly not opposed to. I held off earlier, but I think I finally found a good trade partner in the Arizona Diamondbacks who could really use another starter, and they have a player I'm very interested in 21-year-old B potential Christian Mania. I'm gonna try to make this trade straight up, and thankfully it is gonna go through, so if it wasn't confirmed before, I think we officially suck. We're finally looking at position players and scouting, and from my experience, it's very rare to find good ones, but I found a gem in Bertram McLaughlin. He's gonna come in with very high potential and basically be a defensive wizard, so he's gonna be a very interesting prospect who becomes the #1 position guy on the board. I really thought that by trading Severino, we were conceding this season, but we've actually been a better team without him, as we've won 3 out of our last 4 series, including that one against Minnesota. We are now 4 weeks away from our first MLB draft, and in our first batch of outfielders, it looks like we found a pretty good one in John Tatum. I'm definitely a bit torn because while continuing to win will help our player development, there's no doubt that we could benefit from having the highest possible draft pick, and winning games like this one against Kansas City might push us lower down the draft board as JJ Bleday walks this one off. Several key prospects like Bleday are starting to step up and play very well, and while our offense is still below average, it is certainly not as bad as it could be. We are 36-50 to start July, but now we're taking on the last place team in our division and just hit a go-ahead 3-run shot. That was rookie Max Schumann taking the lead in the 7th inning, and now Brent Rooker lets this fly deep into left field, showing off the power as it is still going all the way to the wall where it will drop in for a triple. I knew Rooker was going going to be our best hitter this season, but I did not think he was going to be an MVP favorite, as he's carried our offense very close to mediocrity. Unless the Angels offense can produce, we're going to win this game, but with 2 guys on in the 8th inning, we're trying to add an insurance run. After Andujar loads the bases, here is Ryan Noda, who continues to be one of our clutchest players on the year, as he scored 1 run, and our 9-hitter Abe Toro is going to smack in another. Ever since trading Severino, our offense has been better than ever, so our core continues to develop as we win another series. When I said that Brent Rooker was the MVP favorite, I actually meant he's leading the entire race with 74 RBIs, and thanks to him, we are now in 3rd place in the division. However, while Rooker is the glue holding our offense together, many players have elevated their play alongside him, such as Miguel Andujar, Lawrence Butler, and JJ Bleday. And considering our only goal this season is to develop players for the future, I think we are exceeding expectations. I think that is the perfect lead into the MLB draft, where for the first time, I am drafting completely blind. I'm going to be trusting potential ranges more than ever, which is exactly why I'm taking Donovan Cordero in the 1st round, considering he's available. But if he's not for whatever reason, I plan to take Bertrand McLaughlin, who may have a higher potential range, but his offense looks like it's going to be a lot worse. Because of the limitations I've given myself, this might be a little bit unstructured, but so far we're off to a very good start, as Donovan Cordero is indeed still available, and I really like his offensive upside, so he's my guy. Now in the 2nd round, many of my favorite players have gone off the board, and while a closer would be a very good value in this spot, we already have Mason Miller. So just because of the way the board shaped out so far, I think I'm going to take a player I cannot pass up in John Tatum, effectively doubling up at left field, but unfortunately my plan just unraveled as Sammy Dobbins went way earlier than I expected, so he must have been pretty good. This is offering me a legitimate challenge, so I feel like I should do this with more of my rebuilds just because of how easy it is to draft in this game, but it doesn't help that this is not a very deep draft at all, especially at pitcher, but I think I'm going to take Jason Oliveros. I am amazed just how much of a difference scouting makes with the players that I like on my board, so in round 3 I feel like I have no other choice but to take the safe pick Andre Sierra. At this point in the draft, I want to add a high upside position player, and this 3rd baseman Thacker looks like a great option, so we're going to do that, and at least with a guy like him on the board, we know that he's not going to be a complete bust. On the other hand though, the rest of our selections could be complete nightmares, so we do have to prepare for the absolute worst, but for now we're going to end the draft by taking a reliever in Rich Ramirez. These drafts are going to be all about making the best possible educated guesses, and I feel like we did a pretty good job of that this time, but of course there's going to be some picks that don't work out quite the way that we were hoping they would. At the All-Star break, we are 42-56, and honestly that is not as bad as I was expecting, but I guess it makes sense because we have a couple All-Stars starting with Mason Miller, and of course there's also Brent Rooker, who is leading all right fielders in voting. We're starting off the 2nd half taking on the Astros, and this series is very important as we are just above them for 3rd place. If we're already ahead of the Astros, our rebuild is way ahead of the curve, and winning the series is a great start. However, now we have a chance to earn the sweep, which would cushion our lead over them in the division, and even though we're probably not making the playoffs this season, finishing year number 1 in 3rd place would be a huge deal. Thanks to Mason Miller, we are never sweating out a 1-run game as he secures the W, so we earned a big-time sweep and cannot stop winning. At the start of August, we are 51-59, but most notably, it is now time to view our first draft picks of the rebuild. Without scouting players, it is impossible to know just how good these guys can be, but it is still crucial to our success that we hit on these guys, so without further ado, here we go, and at the very least, I see some blue potentials. I did not plan on taking 2 left fielders straight out the gate, but I'm glad I did because they are both very good, but most importantly, they are both above 90 potential and should be able to develop pretty quickly. We started off by adding 2 slam dunk prospects to our organization, but then with our 3rd selection, we went for a high floor starting pitcher in Jason Oliveros, who obviously has a lower ceiling, but he looks very polished. However, I'm a bit disappointed in our 4th selection, Andre Sierra, because while he is coming in with very solid contact, his ceiling is no higher than a bench player. Without a doubt, he is the biggest miss of this cycle, as we closed out with 2 high ceiling players, along with a bullpen arm in Rich Ramirez, who's already 69 overall. All things considered though, I'm very excited about the future of this team because Cordero and Tatum look like the real deal, and we could certainly use a few upgrades in our outfield. However, I do wish that at least one of those guys was an infielder because we could use some immediate help at literally all 4 spots, and while we did address the starting rotation, we might not have done enough. I am fully confident that we're on the right track, but now we have a very tough series against the Dodgers, so while we are ahead of schedule, there's still a lot lot of work to do. Right now, we're just trying to avoid a sweep to start the month of August, as we're tied up with the Dodgers, but not for long, as Ruiz sends this deep into left field and over the fence. That is a huge surprise to me, because Ruiz is pretty much the opposite of a power hitter with 34 power versus righties, and so far this year, he only has 6 dingers. But considering that he's the most electric player on this team, we need him to continue to develop if we want to become a playoff contender. Thanks to Ruiz and another RBI from Brent Rooker, we were able to avoid the sweep against the Dodgers, as our offense continues to show flashes, and Ruiz is back at it again with a 2 RBI double. We take a late lead and sweep the Giants, and that all starts with several pieces of our offense really turning it around as Brent Rooker continues a fantastic year. He is already to 40 home runs and over 100 RBIs with just a month to go, but on top of that, players like JJ Bleday, Lawrence Butler, and Ryan Noda continue to improve. However, outside of JP Sears, our rotation has really not been good, although it could have been a lot worse, and it's really the same story for this bullpen outside of our closer Mason Miller. Thanks to Brent Rooker and the development of our other young talent, our offense is now top 10 in runs, but of course the trade-off for that is that our team ERA is 26. Also, in case you were wondering, Brent Rooker is still the runaway favorite for MVP, but looking at our other awards, Ryan Noda is surprisingly in second place for the batting title. I think really all we can do at this point is simulate to the end of the season and see if we win some hardware, as we finished well above expectations at 76 and 86, and sure enough, checking out awards, Brent Rooker is your American League MVP. Having a superstar like Brent Rooker definitely got us a few extra wins, but overall, I'm very happy with the way that this squad has developed, as our main goal this year was to see which players would add themselves to our core, and obviously Brent Rooker won the MVP, but other players like JJ Bleday, Lawrence Butler, and Ryan Noda all look like pieces for the future. We are not bringing back any of our 4 qualified free agents, and it's really the same story for a lot of the guys we have facing arbitration aside from the top 3. The good news about this is we're effectively resetting our budget, so we should have a lot more space to spend, and of course I really want to get an ace level pitcher, but there simply isn't one that makes sense for us. We're going to start out the offseason by bringing in a stopgap option in Yanni Chirinos, along with a solid undrafted reliever in Dwayne Williams. On the offensive side of things, I'm going to add a solid contact hitting second baseman to push Max Schumann, and I think utility man Christian Arroyo would be a perfect fit, and of course it also helps that he is not going to cost us much money. However, my biggest move of the offseason may be bringing in Alex Bregman, who's going to cost us just over $4 million, but should be a reliable starter at the hot corner. Also, I know we're loaded at right field, but Pavin Smith has way too good of stats for me to pass up on, and he's also a very high on base player who's not going to cost us very much money at all. Obviously, we still have the Rule 5 draft, but here are the major moves that we're making, and after signing everybody, we're only sitting at a $34 million payroll. Going into the lottery, we're projected to pick at number 9, but there's a chance that could change based on our luck, and we do stay at number 9. Here's our roster to start season number 2, and while at the top it might not seem too different, we added a lot of very meaningful depth to our team, including players like Alex Bregman and Pavin Smith. However, we're being tested on opening day against a very good Baltimore Orioles team, but we strike first with an RBI double, and now in the 3rd inning, we're looking for more as we load the bases. There are no outs for the reigning MVP Brent Rooker, who goes the other way for a huge bases clearing double, so we are already leading by 4 runs in our very first game, and JP Sears is playing well. After trading Luis Severino, this is the guy that stepped up and became our number 1 starting pitcher, and this year he needs to take another step up. Obviously, our pitching rotation is not good if a 79 overall is our best player, so we're going to need him and the rest of the guys to play far above their ratings, but beating one of baseball's best teams is a very encouraging start. We held this electric offense to just 1 run all day, but of course we still have to play the rest of the series, but I am shocked to see that we win Game 3 before losing the 4th. I'm very excited if we're already looking this good, especially considering we have several top 100 prospects, including number 3 in Nick Kurtz, along with both of our new left fielders coming in at 8 and 19. Our number 1 focus was to revamp this farm system, and it seems we've done exactly that, and after a pretty easy series against the White Sox, we are 5-2, which is tied for first. There's a great opportunity to start hot in season number 2 as we take a late lead in our next series against Cincinnati, so we're unleashing our secret weapon Mason Miller. With Miller on our side, a 1-run game always seems secure, and early on, he has a save in 4 of our 6 wins. After hitting on most of our picks in last year's draft, I feel a lot less pressure this year, but of course, I am still looking to find an impact player, whether that's a starting pitcher or an infielder with our number 9 selection. So far in season 2, we've been in so many close games, but it seems like like every single time we find a way to come through, and a very clutch 9th inning home run just won us another series. After 2 weeks, we are still tied for the division lead, but as you can see, our offense is performing at a high level as we just beat the Cardinals 13-3. That is an area we've only continued to improve on since the end of last year, but on top of that, I am shocked to see that we are ranked 5th in the league in ERA. Unless I'm mistaken, we have not lost a single series this year as we continue to rally in late games, as we have another close one against Chicago. If we score one more run, Mason Miller can come in and close it out, but we're down to our last out of the inning with the go-ahead run on second base, but Ryan Noda, who was one of the clutchest players on our team, strikes again. That would lead to another series victory for the Aces, but now we're facing our toughest challenge against the Seattle Mariners, who we're currently tied with for the division, but we're trying to make a huge statement. Lawrence Butler goes deep, and Jeffrey Springs is shutting them out, so we are absolutely cooking right now, and Brent Rooker's gonna add another home run in the 5th inning to give us a huge lead. The Mariners went out and signed Freddie Garcia, but clearly it is not making a single difference, as this Las Vegas offense was way too much for them. By scoring 8 runs in the first game, we would win the series, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but there's a great chance we might be the best team in the AL West. Obviously though, there's a lot of season left to play, and we still have to look at the MLB draft, where you never know what you're gonna find, but looking at our discovery guys, we've already found 2 very high grade relievers who could slide right into our bullpen. We're leading our division by a game and a half, but might be coming back down to earth, so we desperately need to end our losing skid in this series against the Rangers. A 2-run dinger from our catcher is the best possible start, and one of our most promising pitchers has a shutout going into inning number 6. Mitch Spence is one of the only starting pitchers on this team with B potential, and he's on fast track to becoming our number 1 guy with an ERA of 2.3 and a whip under 1, and in this game he secures a shutout victory. All we need is one more win to secure the series, and there it is. So after briefly losing the division lead to Seattle, we have retaken our crown, and our offense has looked great. As always, Brent Rooker and Lawrence Butler are leading our offense, alongside a surprise in Max Schumann, who's had a great start to the year. But outside of them, newcomers like Christian Arroyo and Alex Bregman have both been very solid additions so far. This is also by far the best our rotation has ever looked, although we're gonna have to send Beto down to AAA, and he'll be replaced by Yanni Chirinos, who we signed this offseason. We are on a roll to start the month of May as we sweep Kansas City, so we stay hot going into a series against the 3rd place Angels. I never expected Vegas to start out the year in 1st place, but we're gonna find out real quick if it's sustainable, as we are down 1 run to the Angels, but after we scored Ruiz from second, Blade hits a 3-run nuke. This is the type of offense we've been seeing all season long, and is the biggest reason we're one of the best teams in the American League. But after leaving the bases loaded, LA ties the game and then takes the lead right back. This bullpen continues to be the weakest link on the entire team, so now our offense needs to wake up once again, and after a double, they're once again gonna load the bases. With only 1 out, we have a chance to tie the game back up, or even take the lead, and this was nearly a double play, but we beat it out. But now there are 2 away with the tying run at 3rd, and we are unable to score him. Our bullpen has to give us a chance, but they give up another run, so we lose the first game of the series, along with game number 2 and game number 3. After the sweep, we are out of 1st place, so after starting the month with great momentum, we're on another losing skid. We are now in extra innings against the Tigers, who take the lead, so we're 3 outs away from our 4th loss in a row. A 4-pitch walk just got 2 runners on, but now Abe Toro's gonna call game with a 3-run shot into right field to give us the win. One of the most clutch teams in the league continues to make magic, as a walk-off victory is the perfect way to rebound from a sweep. Toro just made the play of his life batting in the 9 spot, but that was only one of 6 home runs that we hit in this game, so there's no doubt we deserve to win that game, as our offense continues to get better and better. We are tied for 8th in the league in total home runs, and in no one's surprise, Brent Rooker's hit most of those, but Lawrence Butler, JJ Bleday, and Ryan Noda are not far behind. I was wondering if this could be another MVP season for Rooker, but he is not in the running, and honestly, that is perfectly fine, especially considering the rest of the team has kinda developed around him. If we win this series, we are very much back on track, and there's the sweep, as our offense exploded with a total of 30 runs over just 3 games. I think the most exciting part about all of this is that our offense is not even close to its potential. However, in our next series, we're trailing to a pretty bad Toronto team, and a pass ball gets 2 runners in scoring position for our catcher, Shea Langeliers, and it doesn't matter where on base they are, because he just hit that one over the fence. I don't think I've ever seen a team come through consistently in big moments quite like we do, as this team team has been built on power, but especially in big moments. That made the difference between winning and losing another series, and on top of that, the Mariners are still on our heels. Every single game matters, and of course, we are not going to win them all, especially when we're keeping a lot of these games close. As in our next series, the Red Sox walk it off, and this brings me back to what is maybe our biggest weakness in the bullpen. Rule 5 draft picks Carson Wisenhunt and Kyle Nelson have definitely not worked out, to say the least, but fortunately for us, the final player we selected in last year's draft was a very solid reliever in Rich Ramirez, and even though he's only pitched 14 innings at the AAA level, I really feel like he's ready to make his debut. Hopefully he adds a bit of consistency to our bullpen, because we're going to need all the help we can get entering this pretty difficult stretch of the season, starting with the series on the road against a very good Philadelphia Phillies team. Right now we're tied with the Mariners, so this is a must-win, as we're down 1-0, at least until McCann goes deep. The American League West is currently a two-team race between us and Seattle, and our electric offense continues to keep us in games, as our second dinger of the inning gives us a 2-run lead. I keep talking about the offense, but this has been another quality start for Mitch Spence, except now Brent Rooker hits this over the fence for a grand slam, and there was no doubt that would be the dagger in a very impressive road victory. That would not have been possible without 3 dingers, including the grand salami, and I really thought that not being able to scout players would be a way bigger handicap than it actually has been. Obviously, it's going to make drafting more difficult than normal, but this team has so much young talent that it's basically rebuilding itself, and that definitely takes a lot of pressure off of me to draft perfectly, although I'm still looking at a few players to push us over the edge, because despite our record, I still do not believe in us to make a deep playoff run. However, I don't even know if it's fair to say that anymore, as we have one of the best records in baseball and can sweep Philadelphia on the road, but at least on paper, this entire roster is playing way above their ratings. I keep waiting for this team's crash back down to earth, but for whatever reason, it seems like it's not coming, and if they manage to sweep Philadelphia, I might really hop on the hype train for real. Unfortunately though, they just left 2 runners on base, and now Philadelphia is going to capitalize with 3 runs, so the Phillies rally to save their embarrassment, and we're returning home to take on 2 division rivals. Right now, we are tied up with the Rangers in the bottom of the 12th inning, but with the winning run at third base, we can finally end this as Tyler Nevins jumping up and down, launching this one into center field, and while a sacrifice fly would have been perfectly fine, he ends this with a 2-run dinger. It was not long ago that the Rangers and the Astros were competing in the ALCS, but this season they are in last place in the division, and their fall off definitely makes our push to the playoffs a lot easier. On the scouting end of things, we found some quality players, but I'm certainly relieved to see a few infielders, because if we do make the playoffs, our current infield situation could be the biggest thing holding us back. I was really hoping that Zach Geloff would find a way to develop at AAA, but he's only hitting 220, so I'm going to send him down another level, which is honestly perfectly fine because Andre Sierra, who we drafted last year, is playing lights out. That is very exciting, but there's a few other players who are very close to reaching the major league level, like Tyler Soderstrom, along with the number 3 overall prospect in Nick Kurtz, who's playing very well. Both of those guys were first-round picks, along with shortstop Jacob Wilson, who's also playing very well and could reach the majors around the same time. It is very encouraging to see success at the top of our farm system, as both of our first 2 draft picks are also playing great, so there could be several new players on the way to join an offense that is already above average. We are entering the month of June in a very good spot as we're tied with Houston, but that was an unbelievable play. We just got robbed of the go-ahead runs, and if anybody tries to tell you that defense does not matter, that is the exact play you should show them. The game is still tied, but maybe I spoke too soon, as Lawrence Butler immediately lines in a run, and there are 2 runners on with none away for a former Astro, Alex Bregman. All he needs to do is hit this one deep enough for a sacrifice fly, and it looks like he does exactly that, except it's actually gonna drop in. After a few more runs, our rally still is not over as Max Schumann adds another, so we start out the month on a very good note. Games like this 15-0 victory against Detroit has me very excited about the future, but now we have a very tough challenge taking on Minnesota and then Seattle. This could be a playoff preview, but unfortunately, we're getting outclassed right now, and honestly, I am not surprised because the Twins are one of the best teams in the American League, if not the best right now. However, thanks to a quality start from Joey Estes, we are still in this one, and our offense finally broke through their bullpen in the 7th inning. So now it's Miller time, and there's the win. I was a bit concerned after losing game 1, but we're gonna follow up with another win and a series victory. This offense has been absolutely nothing short of unstoppable, and I honestly would never expect expect that looking at these numbers, as we really only have a couple of standout players. Of course, it really helps that 7 guys on the team have an OPS above 800, and even the guys that don't are still playing at a pretty high level. That was our biggest series win of the season, so we are now 9.5 games above Seattle, and I'm starting to think that they simply cannot beat us. Looking at the draft, I cannot believe how many high-level players we're uncovering, including the number 3 player in the class, Daryl Azaparty, who looks like an absolute gem. Honestly, before this video, I did not think it was important to uncover position players in Discovery, so I really just never did it, but based on the results I've seen so far, maybe I need to do more of it. The only position left to discover for are the outfielders, but regardless, it looks like we're gonna have a ton of options to fill out the rest of our roster, which I'm super excited about. We have only lost 3 games in the month of June, coming into this series against the Atlanta Braves, who are always high-powered, but we strike first with a triple, followed by a double, and for whatever reason, this rotation's been ridiculous this year as Bregman launches a solo shot. It would be hard for Athletic fans to be even more depressed, but watching their team relocate to Vegas and win games with some of their core players in Oakland would be brutal, but clearly something is in the water here because they cannot stop scoring. They just scored 14 runs on 18 total hits, and I truthfully cannot remember the last time I've had a team hit for this much power at any level. We are now the #1 scoring offense in baseball and lead in pretty much every single major category, including dingers, and I think the funniest part about that is we have not even added our top prospects to the team yet. This year's second-round pick, John Tatum, has leapfrogged Nick Kurtz as the #2 prospect in baseball, but there's a very solid chance that Kurtz makes the jump to the majors this season. It is very hard to imagine our season going much better than this, but now we're taking on the best team in baseball, and if we can somehow beat them, I think we know exactly where we stand. We are already leading 1-0, but Shea Langeliers is going to add on another 2 with a deep nuke, and if we keep this up, we may force Clayton Kershaw into retirement. Their best player cost them more than our entire payroll, but we're beating them 8-2, and I'm sure this is the ending that Hollywood wanted to give Moneyball. Not only do we get on base, but we consistently put the ball over the fence, and simming the last game of the series, we sweep them. Even if we do collapse, we have a 14.5 game in the division, and on top of that, with that win over the Dodgers, we have the best record in all of baseball. Even though he's not going to win another MVP, Brent Rooker is still the superstar of this team, but we're also seeing another great year from guys like Ryan Noda, Lawrence Butler, and JJ Bleday. However, other role players like Tyler Nevin, Pavin Smith, and Abe Toro have also been great, along with both of our catchers, which I truly think is important. I cannot believe how good this starting 5 has been, as Mitch Spence has emerged as a Cy Young caliber player, while everybody else, including the new addition Austin Gomber, have improved. A while back, we brought in Yanni Chirinos to be our long reliever, and he honestly has not been great in that role, so I might look for another option, but overall, the rest of our bullpen has been pretty good, especially with the emergence of rookie Rich Ramirez, who so far has only pitched 15 innings, but he has been lights out. However, of course, you cannot talk about the success of this team without discussing our best overall player, Mason Miller, who has been on fire this season with an ERA just over 1 and a whip of 0.75. All of the stars are aligning for us to make a playoff run this year, but of course, if we can't do that, we're going to be bringing in several reinforcements sooner rather than later who should help us get to the World Series. Going into the draft, we're in win now mode a little bit earlier than I expected, which certainly impacts our draft plans, because maybe the last thing we want to do is to take a player who is not going to develop. That being said, I do want to take a starting pitcher with our first selection, whether that's Kevin Law, Gene Short, or Jacob Rosas, but overall, maybe my favorite player in the draft is Morgan McFarland, even though he's at a position that we really don't need. After that, I don't really have a plan, but our Discovery Scouts kinda cooked, finding several key players who could be on the squad, and one of those guys is Daryl Azaparty, who's kind of at a position of need and has very high potential and contact. As always, we're kind of taking a shot in the dark, but after 3 selections, 2 of my favorite pitchers are off the board, and then with the 3rd pick, Jacob Rosas also goes, so my options for the first selection are quickly thinning out. Unfortunately, after that, it did not take long for Morgan McFarland to get snatched up, so right now it seems the safest selection is Daryl Azaparty, even though he's a Discovery guy and could fall to a later round, but as you can see, the starting pitchers that are left on the board are certainly bigger risks, so I feel like we need to make that selection. Having my 3 favorite prospects get selected in the first 3 picks is not a good start, but if Azaparty comes in with high 90s potential and 77 overall, we might have gotten the steal of the draft. Now in competitive round A, I feel like I need to make up for losing out on a starting pitcher, and our safest option might be Wiley Kent, who's coming in with a very high potential range, and at the very least could be solid trade bait. Now for the rest of the draft, I'm going to be taking the safest selections possible, starting with Sawyer Whitfield, who's another lower risk prospect with very high potential. That's going to continue into round 3, where one of my favorite players, Randall Stephenson, is still on the board, and as a switch hitting contact hitter with decent athleticism, I feel like he could be a solid prospect for us. Unfortunately though, one of my favorite players got selected not long after that, but at least in round 4, a lot of my favorite discovery guys are still on the board. There's a lot of good options, but looking at our needs, we could really use another infield prospect, and Emmett Middleton is really the best option we have on the board at this point, so he's going to be my next pick. And now in round 5, there's a lot of very good closing pitchers on my board, but because we're trying to win now, I'm going to take Percy Ostrander, who definitely looks the most pro-ready. Our discovery guys did some real damage for us, as Mark Bosher is still on the board, and as intriguing as he is, we do not need a catcher, so I'm going to do something that I rarely do and select another closing pitcher, and I think our best option, at least according to overall, is going to be Damon Winchester. That draft was honestly just as chaotic as I expected it to be, as I ended up doubling up at 3 different positions just to make sure we fill our needs, as this team currently has the best record in the American League, and I certainly did not have that on my bingo card. This is very exciting, but of course we still need to sustain this pace for the rest of the year, and at least looking at our pitching staff, I'm expecting there to be a bit of drop-off. This bullpen has also been great, as we've brought in several Rule 5 acquisitions, with the only real disappointment being Carson Wisenhunt. But then of course, you cannot talk about this team without mentioning Mason Miller, who is on pace for over 70 saves and has an ERA of just over 1 and a whip of 0.75. There's definitely something broken in the system if he does not take home reliever of the year, and while there's no doubt in my mind that he's going to become an all-star once again, I'm a little disappointed to see that him and Brent Rooker are the only ones. Shifting the focus to our recent draft though, I feel like our discovery guys did a very good job of allowing us to add to our system, and if a lot of our picks fall on the low end of their potential ranges, we could be in some serious trouble. With the way that we've been playing, I am fully prepared for us to be buyers at the trade deadline, which is definitely exciting, as we definitely have enough prospects in the organization to make a big time splash. We start the second half strong with a shutout win against the Rangers, and from now until the trade deadline, I'm going to be checking the trade block pretty consistently to see if we can improve the squad. I'm going to start off by acquiring a reliever from the rebuilding Giants who has 96 walks per 9, and his stats are absolutely ridiculous, and it looks like the Giants are seeking some infield help, so I'm going to trade them straight up Daryl Ernaiz, and I feel like that's a pretty good deal. We are now 2 series away from the deadline, going up against Minnesota and Baltimore, and our performance in these 2 games against some of the better teams in the American League should show us how good we really are. Whether we win or lose, I do plan on being an aggressive buyer at the deadline, and I truly believe our first move for a reliever was just the tip of the iceberg, as I am willing to dump our farm system to make this team great. This offense continues to be nothing short of dominant, as we've scored 11 runs now against Minnesota, so just imagine how good we could be with a few more upgrades. There are a lot of quality in-house options who could make this team even better, and maybe the most intriguing one is shortstop Jacob Wilson, who is 73 overall with B potential. I am fully prepared to bring him up to the show, but checking out other teams' rosters, the rebuilding Marlins have a player I'm very interested in. There are not many players built like Xavier Edwards, who has 99 contact and clutch, and that is just the tip of the iceberg, as he's a switch-hitting 25-year-old with plenty of control. This Marlins team is really bad, so I think I can make a deal that works very well for both sides, giving them a younger player with a higher ceiling in Jacob Wilson, and to complete the trade, I noticed they could really use another third baseman, so I'm going to send them Jordan Diaz, and I feel like that's a pretty fair deal for both sides. We've finally acquired a middle infielder who I really feel sets this offense over the top, and unless something goes terribly wrong the rest of the season, we should be a wrecking ball going into the playoffs. Plugging a player with the skill set of Xavier Edwards into the lineup is probably the lowest risk move we could have made, as contact players always seem to do well in MLB The Show, and Edwards is off to a great start. We start off August by destroying the Mets, and while it's very exciting that we're 20 games up in our division, this also means that we can finally view our draft picks. Remember that we made a lot of safe picks in this draft, so the potentials are all going to be pretty high, which they are, but the real question is, what are their overalls and how soon can they contribute? Going down the list, the results are looking pretty good, and starting at the top, Daryl Azzopardi actually has a very similar skill set to Xavier Edwards, coming in with 85 potential and 64 overall. Looking at this skill set, I really think he could be at the major league level by season 4 or 5, and the same thing goes for Wiley Kent, who was our second round pick and certainly looks as advertised. Unfortunately, I cannot say the same thing about Sawyer Whitfield, who was our third selection, as even though he has 93 potential, that 58 overall is going to make him no better than trade bait, and the same thing goes for Randall Stevenson. It definitely feels weird to be complaining about 90 potential players, but I guess that's just the nature of the rebuild, as guys like Whitman, Stevenson, and Middleton would be great in pretty much any other rebuild except for this one. Middleton especially is probably never going to make this team with 35 contact versus right, and just for reference, Arnold Oshiro was one of the players I passed on in favor of those guys, and as you can see, he is coming in immediately with 74 walks per 9, which as we figured out is the most important stat for a pitcher. The number one target on my board was Morgan McFarland, who was taken not long before our selection, and I really wish he had fallen, as even though we are loaded at first base, he would have been a great addition. However, one player who was available during our selection was Doug Batts, and in hindsight, I probably should have taken him because he is already 70 overall straight out the gate with a 73 walks per 9. At the time, I think taking Azzopardi makes sense, and it certainly helps that we struck gold on Wiley Kent, but honestly, we missed a lot of opportunities, and this draft might have been saved by our final 2 selections, as we took 2 relievers who appear to be MLB ready. 2 years after the Athletics moved to Vegas, they have the number 1 offense in baseball and are gunning for the playoffs, and with the exception of Xavier Edwards and a couple free agency moves, this team is doing it all with their homegrown players. Obviously, Brent Rooker won the MVP last year, but other players like Esteury Ruiz have taken a huge step forward, and it was ultimately players like Ruiz, Rooker, and Langeliers that allowed us to make the move for Edwards. Another big addition this year has been Alex Bregman, who's given us a reliable starter at the hot corner, and while he's only hitting 250, he's on pace for about 90 RBIs. It is amazing how electric our offense is, especially late in games, as Lawrence Butler keeps this fair going the other way. So we are now beating a very good Milwaukee team 11-4 and add 2 more RBIs. This type of offensive dominance has become almost normal for this team throughout the year, and keep in mind, they're usually a pretty good pitching team, but we've combined for 30 runs against them in the past 2 games. Entering September, we are 95-42, and while that is largely thanks to an offense that's ranked first in pretty much every category that you can rank first in, our closer Mason Miller is leading baseball in saves, while our completely new and redone rotation is first in ERA. Honestly, these results are kinda shocking to me considering that we're simulating most of the games and are putting up these numbers, as if we sort by OPS, we have about 7 guys who are above 830. Then after that, players like Ruiz, Blade, and Butler are not far behind, and our current worst ERA is only 737. Our offense has been amazing, but our rotation has no doubt done more with less, as there's no one above 78 overall, and it really goes to show that walks per 9 is the only stat that really matters. I am really hoping this is something the new MLB The Show game fixes, because it's definitely a little broken, as a rotation and a bullpen with this low of overall players should not be playing like an all-star team. No matter what happens the rest of the season, we are definitely going to make the playoffs, so we're just going to cruise through the final month of the season, as we finished 111-51, which was definitely the best record in all of baseball. Without any surprises, Mason Miller was the delivery man of the year with 55 saves and a 1.39 ERA, as he just had one of the best closer seasons baseball has ever seen. Just a year after winning MVP, Brent Rooker sort of fell off with a 26 home run, 108 RBI season, which certainly isn't bad by any means, but if we look at last year's stats, it's definitely a noticeable drop-off. Thankfully though, this season he was not alone, as we had 3 other players hit over 20 home runs, along with 3 more guys who had over 15. Of course, this offense was extremely well balanced, especially with the addition of Xavier Edwards, who was lights out, and it's crazy that 752 was the lowest OPS on the team. While I expected our offense to take a big step forward, I never anticipated just how good this pitching rotation would become, as every single player in our 5-man rotation had an ERA under 3.6, while our long reliever Yanni Chirinos was not far behind. Then the rest of our bullpen was also just as good, if not better, especially Mason Miller, who won Delivery Man of the Year. I would honestly be terrified to face this team in the playoffs, and in the ALDS, we are going up against a team that we've played quite a bit this season. I never imagined us reaching the playoffs in the second season of this rebuild, but now we need to be very careful, because I've seen even the best teams collapse in October. We are down 1-0 in the 5th inning, as our offense has has not been able to get anything going, so we desperately need a rally, and getting 2 guys on base is a good first step, but a nice play at second will end the inning. After that, we would go down by 2 runs and make it 3 as we start off the playoffs getting shut out at home. That did not look like the #1 offense in all of baseball, but at least now we're up 1-0 thanks to a great game from JP Sears. Now it is all up to our bullpen, but even though we have the best closer in all of baseball, it would be great to add another insurance run as Lawrence Butler drives this deep into right center field where it does not get down. We have runners at the corners, but are going to strand both of them, so it is 1-0 in a crucial playoff game for Mason Miller. All we can do is trust him to get the final out of the game, and that edge strike is called, so even though it was not pretty, we tie the series back up. Obviously, scoring 1 run is not nearly enough, so we need to break through in game number 3 and get our offense back, and of course a dinger from Blade is a great place to start, but now Pavin Smith obliterates this one into right field, going all the way back to the wall where unfortunately it's not deep enough. That nearly changed the game, but at least Jeffrey Springs is having a very nice day on the mound, and even though he's our number 3 starter, he might have been our best pitcher this year, and we need him to keep playing great because we once again strand 2 runners. It is once again Miller time, but there's already a runner on second, and what happens? I simmed literally 2 plays, and Royce Lewis hits a walk-off 2-run homer against Mr. Reliable, so we are in a massive slump and are now facing elimination. It is do or die for the Las Vegas Aces, but Joey Estes gives up a solo shot, so we are in some serious trouble, especially after 3 runs and make that 5 runs in the 4th. This was the worst possible time for us to fall into the worst offensive slump of our season, as we've only averaged about a run per game, and of course in game number 4, our pitching also suffered. We had no problem beating the Twins in the regular season, but of course we fall short when the lights are the brightest, as they eliminate us from the playoffs in season 2. My goal this offseason is to revamp our pitching rotation, but we're losing 2 key starters in Yanni Chirinos and Austin Gomber, but with so many players hitting arbitration, I'm not sure how much money we're gonna have. If I had to guess, after signing everybody, our payroll's gonna be around $50 million, so that means we only have $10 million to spend on a pitcher, which is definitely not enough. That means the trade market is probably gonna be our best place to go, and I'm looking at making another deal with Miami for a guy like Braxton Garrett or even Ryan Weathers, but the Washington Nationals are another good option as Mackenzie Gore is only 2 years away from free agency and Mitchell Parker is their 5 starter. It would be awesome to solve all of our problems by signing someone like Vlad Jr., but that is not the way this rebuild works, and if it was an option, I would grab at least one of the starting pitchers from a very loaded class, but even looking at someone like Chris Sale, who's 37 years old, signing him to a 1-year deal would eat up all of our budget. I'm going to acquire some extra pitching depth by making this move for Tony Gonsolin, and I'm going to follow that up by packaging last year's first-round pick Daryl Azaparty in a deal for Shohei Ohtani. I'm just kidding. The player we're actually going to get is going to be Gavin Stone, who has 72 walks per 9, and I feel can really help us. We have upgraded our starting rotation, and I would be perfectly fine with this going into opening day, but I might have found another quality starter that we can actually afford in free agency. Aaron Savale is a very well-rounded target with 73 hits per 9 and is coming off sort of a down year last year, but I truly believe in him, and he's only asking for $7 million a year, which we can definitely do. We're bringing him in to replace Jeffrey Springs, who's going to cost us $7.8 million per year, and while he had a good season last year, the Padres could really use a starting pitcher, and in return, we're going to get a solid reliever in Tom Cosgrove. We are nearing the end of the offseason, and I'm getting very aggressive, making a big-time move with the Marlins, trading one of our best pitching prospects alongside 2 potential guys to get a very talented player in Braxton Garrett, who has 94 walks per 9 and is going to become our brand new ace. We have emptied our farm system to go all in on season number 3, and with the way our lineup's looking, I have no doubt we can be an even better team. As for our rotation, our ace from last year is now our number 5 starter, which truly speaks volume to our improvement, and just a reminder that our offense and our team ERA was already ranked first in the league last year, so the fact that it got even better is scary. On opening day, we are facing 99 overall Paul Skeens, who so far is no-hitting us, and in the 6th inning, he is still throwing in triple digits. Normally, this would not be good, but our new ace, Braxton Garrett, is also pitching a gem, and now Langeliers goes deep for our first run of the year. He was able to obliterate Skeens' fastball, and Lawrence Butler makes it back-to-back as he left the curveball right over the plate, as our lineup is even more powerful on paper coming into the new year, and they are wasting no time showing it. That was a double from JJ Bleday, who would then score after a weird play at shortstop, so it may have taken a while, but we finally broke through Skeens, and this will be our third home run of the inning. Vegas wakes up with 5 runs in the 7th, so I am very excited for this year, especially if we can keep this going as Ruiz scores another run. Now that their bullpen's in the game, they clearly do not have a chance because they keep launching balls into the parking lot, and on top of that, our new ace Braxton Garrett pitched 8 scoreless innings, but our bullpen blows that real quick. Even though we don't secure the shutout, that was an amazing game, as Braxton Garrett only allowed 2 hits and 2 walks in his first game with the Aces, and on top of that, we started the season strong with 4 home runs, all coming in the 7th inning. At least early on in the season, this team is looking like everything that I was hoping it could be, as we continue to show off the power late in games. Because of that and great pitching, we are 4-0 to start the year, and this fast start is exactly what we needed going into 3 straight divisional series. Our division is very competitive, so we need to come out swinging, and that is exactly what Ruiz does, tying this game against Seattle, but there's a chance to take the lead with the bases loaded. Unfortunately though, Rooker hit it straight to second base, so we do not score any more runs, which means we're still even going into the 9th inning, but there may be trouble as Verdugo gaps a double into left center. Now we need Joey Estes to lock in, and that is exactly what he does, so we have a chance to walk it off, and our first batter, Lawrence Butler, does exactly that. We stay undefeated with a deep shot into center field as he reads the sinker beautifully, and that is a signature division win. We are on fire to start the year, as I never expected 10-0, but now we're being tested against the second place Astros, and Lawrence Butler launches a statement 2-run shot. That's a great start, as Garrett is playing great, along with the rest of our brand new rotation, which is the biggest reason we only lost 1 game in the first 2 weeks. Also remember that this is only the 3rd season of a 5-year challenge, so I think we're in pretty good shape, but even though we're having great success in the spring, it does not matter if we flop in the playoffs. The Phillies are the best team we've played up to this point in the year, and they're giving us a strong run for our money in extra innings, at least until our rookie first baseman, Nick Kurtz, launches that one over the fence. We've finally brought up the number 2 prospect in baseball, and I'm glad we did, because he's our highest ceiling player and could be exactly what we need to push to the World Series as Mason comes in and secures us an extra innings victory. We have an amazing 28-4 record to start May, and looking at our season stats, especially on the starting pitching side, this is no surprise, as everybody except for JP Sears has an ERA under 3. But in addition to that, our bullpen has been absolutely flawless, while Mason Miller continues to establish himself as one of baseball's all-time great closers. Just like last season, our offense is extremely well balanced with a lot of guys above 900 and 800 OPS, but our biggest strength right now is without a doubt our power, as guys like Lawrence Butler, Shea Langeliers, and new rookie Nick Kurtz are hitting the cover off the ball. We're the best team in baseball, but this is the first series that really matters, as we're taking on the Twins for the first time since the playoffs. They are the reason that we reconstructed our pitching rotation, as Xavier Edwards gets us on the board in inning number 5, and Aaron Savale continues to show why we made him the highest paid player of the entire rebuild. It is still a 1-run game in the 8th, but the bases are loaded for Nick Kurtz with 2 away, and he manages to drive in 1 run as another rounds third heading for home, where the throw comes in offline, but the runner is out. A 2-run lead seems like a guaranteed win for Mason Miller as he closes out a victory, and we get revenge against a very good Minnesota team. Unlike in previous years, I'm confident we're making the playoffs, so I'm gonna move a bit faster, and this series against the Dodgers could very well be a World Series preview, and we just got a double stolen away from us. That could very well be how this one ends. However, it is not over yet, because we just hit another double off the wall. We are still fighting, as Ruiz has 99 clutch, but cannot get this to drop, so the range of Mookie Betts strikes again, but Xavier Edwards makes them forget about it with a tying 2-run shot. Obviously, he is not a power hitter, but he makes the play of his life with 2 outs in the 9th, so now we're going to extras where not only the game, but the series is on the line, and I do not know why he's celebrating. That guy really thought he just won the game, but instead, we could be going to the 12th inning, as there are 2 away for Abe Toro, who gives this one a ride deep into right center field, going back, and it has the distance to win the game. We have defeated the Dodgers in a regular season thriller, and even though it took a pair of very clutch 2-out home runs, this team does whatever it needs to win. That is why we're still baseball's best team entering the month of July, as we may be second in the league in runs scored, but our team ERA right now is completely untouchable. Thanks to our great play, Brent Rooker is back in the MVP conversation for the first time in a couple years, but of course, he is not not the only guy in the running for hardware, as Braxton Garrett and Mitch Spence are 1 and 2 for the Cy Young. Hopefully, to no one's surprise, Xavier Edwards is on top for the batting title, while Mason Miller is looking to earn another reliever of the year. And amazingly, he has not given up a single run all year, and we're almost 3 months in. At this point, I'm not really sure how much the MLB draft matters, especially since we're picking at number 26 in the first round. And that might be a good thing, because looking through this class, there are not many players that I'm super confident in. Our Discovery guys did not uncover very many gems, so I'm pretty much drafting entirely based on vibes. And with our first pick, we're going to take this second baseman and hope that he turns into something. Now in round 2, I'm going to do the same thing, going for the safest pick possible in Mark Schiff. But overall, this might be the thinnest draft board I've ever seen, so in competitive round B, we are going back to second baseman, taking either Estevan Santo or Devin Cortez, and I think I'm going to go with Santo. Just like last year, I am left with very few options in the 6th round, and while it's certainly a challenge with a lot of uncertainty, I really like the restriction of not being able to scout any players that I draft. Looking at All-Star voting, we had 2 of our starting pitchers make it alongside Mason Miller, but once again, I am shocked because the only player to make it from our offense was Brent Rooker. Just because of that, I want to try to add another star bat at the deadline to put this team over the top as we start off the second half with a huge grand slam. For whatever reason, that one play showed me that we're a World Series team, but we have to be willing to go all in. But as you can see, there are not many good bats on the market. If we want to make this happen, we're gonna have to get creative, and it looks like the best option available is Brennan Rodgers, who would be a 1-year rental, but he's having a pretty solid year. Because he's hitting free agency after the year, it is not going to cost a lot to get him, but I am overpaying just to make sure I'm not exploiting the game. But it still only took a couple decent prospects to get a guy we're going to plug straight into our lineup. I particularly wanted him to mash against lefties because that's been a problem for us throughout the series. And while he may not be a star, he's having the best season of his career and is currently tied with our leaders in hits. That move is also going to take our budget up to $58 million, so we probably don't have space to make another addition. So even though a lot of players have not reached their ceilings, there is a chance that this is the best our team can possibly get. Here's our 3rd draft of the rebuild, and while there are certainly some good value players here like Mark Schiff and Estevan Santo, none of these players are gonna be ready by season 5, so they are trade bait at best. We currently have the number 1 prospect in baseball in John Tatum, who is also joined by 7 other prospects on the top 100 list. But the big problem with guys like Tatum and Cordero is right now we are completely stacked at outfield. Since we're already over 90 wins entering August, I don't think there's anything left to do but simulate the rest of the season, as we did beat the all-time win record with 118. As you probably could have guessed, we are taking home some hardware with Brent Rooker winning his 2nd MVP in 3 years. But going over to the next tab, you can see that we finished the season with the top 2 Cy Young finalists, as newcomers Aaron Savale and Braxton Garrett were absolutely electric this year. A little less notable, but still very important, Xavier Edwards won the batting title. But then the big one, Mason Miller is once again your reliever of the year, finishing with 57 saves and an ERA under 1. He is well on his way to being maybe the best closer of all time, as he's been the reliable anchor of what was a very good bullpen in Las Vegas. Calling our starting rotation anything short of lights out would be an absolute insult, as our worst guy had an ERA of 3.5 with a whip of 1.22. As far as our offense goes, the mid-season addition of Brendan Rodgers was definitely a good move, as he may not have supplied much power, but we needed guys who could consistently get on base in true organizational fashion. On top of that, there were 8 guys on the team with an OPS above 800, so this was another very exciting step forward for an offense that was already very good. However, none of that matters if we choke in the playoffs again, and the pressure is a little bit higher as we're facing a division opponent in the Seattle Mariners. I'm a little bit concerned because we had trouble with Minnesota's rotation last year, but Seattle's is on a whole nother level, so Braxton Garrett needs to show the world why he won the Cy Young, but he is off to a bad start. I really hope that's not a sign of bad things to come, but we are gonna strike right back with 3 runs, and after that, we rallied to win game number 1. This is a very different start than last year's playoffs, where our offense failed to show up, but I might have spoke too soon, as we've only scored 1 run against their ace, Logan Gilbert. It's not over yet, but we're gonna need some magic, as they bring in a new pitcher with the tying run on first, but we ground out. Seattle would go on to score 3 runs in the 9th inning to even the series at 1 apiece, and now in game 3, we're taking on another 95 95 overall pitcher in George Kirby, but this time we start out strong, hitting a 2-run bomb in the first inning. I truly believe that if we win this game, we're gonna win the entire series, as MVP Brent Rooker drives in a run, except the throw comes in perfectly, he is out. As we've proven time and time again, speed is not our strong suit, but at least we have the bats to back it up, and a 2-run lead should be more than adequate for Mason Miller, but why stop there? I have a lot of confidence after beating one of their 95 overall pitchers, because now we only need one more, and there it is. We advanced to the ALCS for the first time in the video, and we're taking on the Boston Red Sox, who certainly are no slouch either, as of course they still have Garrett Crochet, but also Kyle Tucker. I think we win the entire series by default if we beat Garrett Crochet, and right now, him and Garrett are in a clash of the Titans, but there's a nuke. We draw first blood in the 5th, while they still have not scored, and after giving up 4 runs in his first playoff start to Seattle, he shows everybody why he won the Cy Young, as he shuts out the Red Sox and beats a 97 overall. Crochet was the huge hurdle, but I think the rest of their rotation is really not anywhere close to as good as ours. But game number 3 is all tied up, at least until JJ Bleday goes deep, trying to keep it fair, and it will hit the foul pole for a go-ahead 3-run shot. That was so close to going foul, but it does win us this game, so we are 1 win away from the World Series, and there it is. It's gonna come down to us versus either the Braves or the Phillies, and sure enough, it is Philadelphia. And if you remember, the cool thing about this matchup is that we swept them early on in the year. We are 4 wins away from beating this challenge in the 3rd year as we start strong, hitting back-to-back home runs in the first, followed by 2 more in the 3rd. That was all it took to win game number 1 of the World Series, as there is no doubt we are locked in, winning the 2nd and the 3rd game. With the challenge on the line, I am jumping in, and we start strong with a Rooker home run, but of course, the Phillies are not gonna go down without a fight. Unfortunately for them though, there's a 2-run bomb followed by another single shot, and of course, it helps to have the best bullpen in baseball. Someone like Brent Rooker is a huge reason we're here, so it is very fitting that he will hit his 3rd home run of the day, and I certainly knew he would be a quality player, but I never expected him to win 2 MVPs in 3 years. However, I do need to give credit where it's due to Xavier Edwards, who was with us for both of our playoff runs, and obviously this season he won the batting title, but also put up a 915 OPS, and while he is certainly our most high-profile addition, other guys like Brendan Rodgers and Pavin Smith, who we signed in free agency, are a huge reason that we're here. Mason Miller earns another save, closing out a dominant World Series sweep for the Phillies, as I moved the Oakland Athletics to Las Vegas and won them a World Series in 3 seasons without ever scouting players. This was a very fun concept that I've wanted to try out for a long time, so thank you guys for sticking all the way to the end of this video. If you did enjoy, please drop a like and subscribe, and also click right here to see more of my content.